Join us every Wednesday for InFocus, a weekly talk show produced by the St. Kitts Nevis Information Service, where we provide exclusives with key persons within the government and discuss pertinent, relevant, and interesting matters that affect us all. Tune in every Wednesday, live on ZIZ Radio and streamed live on Facebook at SKNIS Media and ZIZ Online. InFocus, your government, your business.
I'm Ian Richards. Welcome to InFocus, a weekly program where we zoom in on what's happening within and throughout the government, your government. May 16 is commemorated as the International Day of the Boy Child. Now, it is not widely recognized as some other international observances, but the St. Kitts and Nevis government has embraced this commemoration as it presents another opportunity to focus attention and facilitate discussions on the range of issues affecting boys, such as positive masculinity, crime and violence, and cultural norms. Joining us today to share more on how the government is working to protect boys and their future are Dion Brown, Gender Field Officer in the Department of Gender Affairs, St. Kitts, and Mario Phillip, Gender Officer, Department of Gender Affairs, Nevis. Stay with us as we delve into your government, your business. Welcome back to InFocus, and allow me now to welcome back to InFocus Mr. Dion Brown. You've been here before, sir. Welcome.
Thank you.
And for the first time, we have Mario Phillip. And I do believe, sir, that it's the first time we actually had an official from the NIA on the program. So a special welcome to you.
Well, thank you so much. And it's always good to be first, you know, in good things, that is.
Of course. So we're here to discuss the International Day of the Boy Child, which, as we established at the opening, is on May 16th, excuse me.
Yes.
So let's talk a bit about, before we get into that, your role, because we established that Mr. Brown, you're a gender field officer, and Mr. Phillip, you're a gender officer. Tell us a bit about what that role entails, and is there a difference between the two?
Well, I'll start. Mr. Richards, I think as a gender officer, our role is to really analyze and find gaps, inequalities, and inequities where there are, and when we find inequalities and equities, our role is to recommend to the government ways that we can bridge those gaps, so we can make a more just society, a more equal society, a more equitable society, and that's by recommending policies, legislation, also proposing programs and projects that we can do to bridge those gaps that will provide opportunity for men, women, boys and girls, wherever they are. And there are a range of issues that we needed to address in order for those gaps to be filled.
What factors are included in scheduling program activities that cover males and females?
Well, of course, one of the major factors would be research, right? We want to ensure that we make decisions based on empirical data that we would have collected, either as a department or just data that already exists in the space, in the Caribbean, or particular to St. Kitts and Nevis. This is very important to the work that we do. For example, how we treat with men and boys around the world. There's a large focus on women, but in the Caribbean in particular, we realize that in many instances our males are the ones that are left behind in terms of education, in terms of their ability to be present in family life and that sort of thing, in terms of the impact that violence has on society. It's mainly violence is perpetrated against men, right? And that is opposite to what happens in the entire world. And so while large organizations like the UN have a lot of focus on women, we have to look at the data that we have here at home, and so that's one of the main things, and then we tailor it to what we see, both to men and to women as the needs be.
Okay, so now, of course, we established earlier, Mr. Philip, that you're from Nevis, you're the NIA
Yes.
representative in terms of a gender officer, and of course, Mr. Brown is from St. Kitts. He insisted that you be included in this discussion here today, and the question would be then, it suggests that there is some sort of a collaboration, a strong collaboration between the departments here in St. Kitts and also in Nevis. Talk to us a bit about that.
Yes, so definitely the relationship between both departments is a good one. We get along well, and we intentionally ensure that our departments collaborate with each other, and it has many benefits. We experience economies of scale, right? And if I could start to talk about the different issues, but as to how we collaborate and the successes that we've seen from that, it's a long list. But just as we are looking at males today in the Day of the Boy Child, we have decided that for our celebration of International Men's Day, that we would do a joint award ceremony, right, for men across the Federation. Before our time, we would have done an award ceremony on Nevis, one on St. Kitts, and Diana and I said we are doing the same thing. Why don't we just pool our resources, and we would experience economies of scale doing things that way. Have a grander award, less costs, and it benefits our society, our federation, our government, and people. And so those are ways that we work together. Sometimes we don't notice until other people say, "Hey, look, like the Department of Gender is great, I wish that my department would work well with St. Kitts, or the St. Kitts team would say, "I wish my department worked well with Nevis that way." But you have to be intentional about it, and put country above self. That's our mandate as
So
Kittitians.
International Men's Day, that happens in November.
November,
Yes.
Right. So talk to us a bit then about that collaboration in terms of having that ceremony, because it will be the first time that they're being held on a federal level. So how do you divide? Is it going to be in St. Kitts? Is it going to be in Nevis? How will that work?
Well, last year we had it for the first time at the National Awards. It was the inaugurated ceremony was held in Nevis. So this year is St. Kitts' turn to hold the award ceremony. Nevis went big, so we're hoping to go big in St. Kitts as well. I see there's a benefit to it, like Mr. Philip would have said, that you see it's good to work together as a unit, and it's good to pool resources, especially when resources are scarce.
Yes.
And when we say resources, not just financial, but also the human resource that is, because our departments are really small, and we realize that, collaborating, we can just pool our human resource instead of doing two separate awards. We can just do one, and it becomes greater than it normally is when we have it separately.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think gender officers seem to be mostly males. Is that correct?
Oh, no. You're very wrong.
Because based on my interaction, of course, Mr. Brown, and I interact frequently. Mr. Philip is the first time I recall Troy Watson, who also was in the Department of Gender Affairs. He was also a male. I didn't really have much interaction with any females that were based there.
Well, I would tell you that I am the only male in my department. In the gender machinery in Nevis, I am the only male. That means from the cleaner, go up to, when you get to the premier, he's the other guy, right? And Dion is also the only male in the department.
So then, does that create a disparity, so to speak, in terms of the shaping of the programs and the activities and the projects to address boys and males?
I don't necessarily think so, but it is so. Right? It's based on as we get leadership and management comes, it's based on their mandate that they bring to the department, right? Because we would have management that want to focus on bringing men and boys, focus on them to make them more equitable, give them opportunities like they would give women and girls, and so it's based on person's attitudes towards men and boys, you know, and that's how we get in the situation that we are in.
Yes, I know my permanent secretary has always been saying, you know, we need to find another male, but I think it's the, you know, somebody who is available and also the right fit, you know, because gender work, you need the right fit, and don't think I have time to talk about that, but
I was just going to ask you, what is the right fit?
Well, you
just
need,
briefly,
you need to have a heart for people, because my work really is for people. You know, from I get up, I'm thinking about people, the boys in the boys mentorship program, the mainly women, but men too, who experience gender-based violence. Our department, we have the daycare assistance program, you know, for parents who need that assistance, you know, to allow them to experience economic independence, going out to work whilst they have the child taken care of, right? So everything that we do is geared towards people and ensuring that they have a better life to live, right? So you need somebody who is sensitive and also somebody who is an advocate, because not everybody thinks that somebody needs a better life to live, especially if it might inconvenience them in some way. Yeah. So you need somebody who is bold enough to stand up and insist, this is what the law says, this is our policy, and to champion the cause of somebody else. Because we're not normally the ones in need, right? It's normally, you have to have that empathy to look at somebody else and say, I will champion that cause. I want you to have a successful life, a good life, just as I do.
Right, yes. And in doing that advocacy, and it's the question that popped to mind when you mentioned in terms of having that heart for people. First of all, you have to, of course, understand what's happening on the ground.
Yes.
Because you're not able to address something if you don't know what's happening. You can't operate in a vacuum. But then it also helps to shape the priorities that will be set in terms of the programming that will be done in terms of making that intervention. Yes. Because an intervention for a female is certainly different from an intervention for male.
Yes.
So then speak to us a bit about how you work and pass on and develop the projects and pass them on to your supervisors to help to do those things to empower males and also females as well. So what basis is there?
Well, I would say that my superiors are very supportive. The Assistant Secretary, Ms. Latoya Jeffers, and our permanent secretary, Shalissa Martin Clark, they are very supportive and very supportive of males, right? And I don't only work in the male programs and so on, but, so I would say they're supportive generally. And when I bring an initiative, they always, you know, want the facts, the budget and so on, but they're always, once they see the value in it, they're always, you know, behind it 100%, all the way up to the minister and so on. So. And the team at the Department of Gender. So, especially for males though, because as I mentioned at the start, the challenges, the peculiar challenges that we have in the Caribbean and especially in St. Kitts and Nevis as it relates to our males being behind in certain key areas, I find that there is even greater empathy. And the fact that we do have a number of female focused programs, right? And so when you bring a program for men, you're likely to get that support, right, to see it happen.
Mr. Brown, talk to us about the process for empowering and developing these strategies to really help to uplift boys and uplift males.
Well, as Mr. Philip would have said, first we do research. We have to be on the ground to think about what is happening, hear what's happening, and what men and boys think their issues are, what their challenges are, what they're facing right now in their homes, in their communities, at school, right? And when we get those information, that data, we really go back and analyze it and you know, just see if we can develop a program or a policy to address the issues and the challenges that they face and pass it on to our superiors. Like Mr. Philip said, my superiors as well, you know, they're very supportive of, you know, the initiative with boys and men, and I think there's something special happening this year, right? I can't announce it as yet, but there will be something special happening for all men this year in St. Kitts and Nevis. So we'll be back.
Stay tuned.
So you know, because my superiors would have realized that, you know, the minister would have realized that all men are being left behind. and our men feel like they're unheard. They're not listened to. They feel like, females are mostly getting the opportunities, right? And the opportunities are being provided for them. So to address this, we have come up with something hopefully it would be an annual thing. So we'll be back. I can't mention it, but we'll be back with the information.
Annual as in later this year, what month in particular, anything?
I can't tell you the month, but it's before the year end.
Okay. Any practical examples that you can give in terms of how you would have worked to address any gender disparity, equity, that sort of issue that you all can share?
Oh, well, I can speak definitely. First and foremost in my mind is the Boys Mentorship Program, right? Would have started in St. Kitts, and Dion has been championing the program for some years. And when I joined the department, I decided, we must have it started in Nevis. And thankfully for our sponsors, Bank of Nevis International, the Bank of New Innovation, people upgrade from time to time, the Bank of New Innovation, money, we have been able to have a successful start to the program. That program, it helps the young men in our secondary schools. We're not in primary schools yet, but eventually it ensures that they get what they need to excel, right, to become boys and then men of excellence, right, to get that peculiar focus. They are assigned a mentor, one-to-one, so they have a community volunteer dedicated to them to ensure that they succeed academically, relationally, socially, in sports and in every area that they want to. And so I see that, addressing the needs that boys have in particular as it relates to high school education, where they are ahead of girls in terms of the dropout rate or not passing the required amount of C-Sex subjects and that sort of thing. And so that is a practical intervention that the Department of Gender uses to assist our society.
Right, and that mentorship program exists in St. Kitts and also in Nevis, as you mentioned. Yes, it was launched there. And in terms of the launch, when was it launched in Nevis?
In Nevis, that was October of 2022.
And Mr. Brown in St. Kitts?
July 2016.
Where the gap?
Well, it took us that long for Nevis to really decided to take up the program.
In the fullness of time, God sent forth His Son into the world. And nothing happens before its time. And so, you have to have right people, you have to have the right money, you have to have the right purpose and everything. So that was the right time for it.
Right,
the parents can attest to that they are happy with the success that they have seen from the program and the transformation in their sons.
And I recall that the minister, a federal minister responsible for social development, well, the Minister of State, that is, the Honorable Iselin Phillip, and that includes gender affairs as well.
Yes.
She would have journeyed to Nevis to take part in the launch of that.
Yes, certainly.
Again, that's part of the collaboration that gender brings and how we are leading in unity and togetherness across the Federation. Because I remember our minister then, the Honorable Hazel Brandy Williams, she had an emergency sitting of the Nevis Island Assembly, and so we benefit by having two ministers of gender in the country, and so the Honorable Iselin Phillip was able to declare the launch of the program in Nevis.
Right. Okay, let's hone in now on the International Day of the Boy Child, which St. Kitts and Nevis celebrates annually on May 16th. Persons who are looking at this live or on the replay on social media would have seen that it was established during our infographics. Now, give us an update, a brief update on the history of this commemoration.
Well, the International Day of the Boy Child, it was a project that founded by Dr. Professor Jerome Tilloch Singh from Trinidad, and it started in 2018. The International Day of the Girl Child would have started in 2012, right? And Professor Tilloch Singh, who is a lecturer at St. Augustine, UWI campus, he was the founder of the International Men's Day as well. And he realized that the world needs a day that focuses on boys. In my conversations with him, along with Dion, because we would have spoken with him recently, personally, to understand, his heart behind starting the International Day of the Boy Child. And he would have expressed that he remember growing up as a boy, he remembered the inequalities that he saw. He remembered the boys being treated as if education was important for them. He remember the punishment being, being sent out of the class. Or when the teacher would issue corporal punishment, it would be, so much more severe than what the girls would receive. And some boys feel, beaten upon and abused, right? And so he decided that he wanted to start this day to address the challenges that boys face. He remembered violence in his community that affected, teenage boys. And so he wanted, based on his experiences, he wanted to bring some positivity to the world to ensure that boys of the future can grow up in a safer space.
And it's something that was adopted internationally. The UN took it and ran with it. With something from Trinidad that certainly, is something that is very commendable.
Well, not the UN,
No, I don't think the
because
UN.
as I mentioned, some of the international focus, in terms of in the gender space, focus is more on women, and as I said, that can be justified when you look at the circumstances in some parts of the world, right? How women are so far behind men, but we don't think that it is so here in the Caribbean and in St. Kitts and Nevis. So the UN, I guess, because they are taking, they have a global mandate, right? And so they're responding to that. So they focus more on women. So the International Women's Day and the International Day of the Girl Child, those are UN recognized days, right? So, but in terms of International Men's Day and the Day of the Boy Child, not so. We would continue to advocate for it to be so, right?
Yes.
But they're important days for us here in St. Kitts and Nevis and the Caribbean, and around the world too. I know Africa and Australia, practically everywhere, but it's the countries recognizing it on their own, not necessarily from the UN. But that's that again, going against the tide. That's credit to Professor Tilak Singh.
The local theme for this year's observance is provide, protect, prepare. Why these 3 Ps?
Well, when we thought of this theme, right, we wanted it to really address the issues that we see today. And when we think about provide, we're not just thinking about material wealth, but we are thinking about nurturing environment where our boys can feel safe and protected, right? And where our boys are, get to thrive in an environment where our boys and help them to express their vulnerabilities and express themselves. And I think too often that we don't allow our boys to express themselves. We pass judgment on them. We tell them not to talk so much. We don't show them the affection. We have boys growing up don't know how to show affection because their parents don't show them affection. When they go to school, they don't get that affection. And I think that our boys grow up not knowing how to express themselves and show affection to one another. And it would be important for men to show affection to their children, their boy child, and so they could know that there's nothing wrong with showing affection to another male. And I think that we have these notions and attitudes that it's hard to change, but we probably need to sensitize our public, that these are false notions and false attitudes to have against masculinities.
So
in terms of protection, yes. In terms of protection, we're not protecting them just from physical health, but we are safeguarding their mental and emotional health as well. And as we try to protect their physical health, we want to make sure that they're protected emotionally, and that comes with expressing themselves again, being expressed how they feel, what they would like, and what they want to be, and so on. I think too often we tell boys and we tell men not to be emotional, right? Not to cry, not to really go deep into expressing how they feel and so on, letting it all out, right? And that also is a part of relief, and everyone, when experiencing something, any trauma or a circumstance, that they need to express themselves. Unfortunately, we never taught them, right, how to express themselves positively. So it come out in a negative way. We see violence. We see how they're just angry all the time because they're never taught to offload their feelings, right? And I think that we need to protect them in that way, by providing that space again, and because they're all interconnected. And when we think of the preparation, it's just preparing them to be responsible adults. All these things that I just mentioned, it would be preparing them to be responsible adults. Little facts here: boys are four times more likely to have autism than girls. In terms of ADHD, 85% more boys develop ADHD. So we can see, these are issues that are affecting our boys, and we need sometimes to adjust the way that we deal with boys, the way that we feel and think about boys and men. We tend to think boys and men can handle themselves, so we leave them all alone and we let them just run off by themselves while we shelter and protect our girls, right? And I think that's wrong. I think that needs to change. We show boys more love and affection, and we nurture them to become responsible adults, adults that can express their feelings, adults that don't have to be ashamed to be vulnerable, right? And I think that's the biggest way we can make changes.
We're up against the clock for our first break, but I would want to have you discuss a bit more on the violence aspect of it. And you mentioned in terms of some of the risks and vulnerabilities in terms of autism and ADHD, but we're going to take the break first and we'll have more of that discussion. Okay. We'll be right back with more In Focus. Welcome back to In Focus. We continue our discussion with Mr. Dion Brown of the Department of Gender Affairs in St. Kitts and Mr. Mario Phillip, the Department of Gender Affairs in Nevis. Now, Mr. Brown, before we took the break, you spoke about a prevalence of ADHD and also autism. You said it was 40% for autism in males, and also for ADHD it's 85%. Now, that could help to contribute, and Mr. Phillip jump in as well, to contribute to the fact that of how males are viewed, in terms of males are viewed as, or should I say boys in this case, more disgusting. Mm-hmm. And they also get into trouble often. Now with statistics and these information here, as we learn more about ADHD and we become more in tune to some of the mental aspects that take place in terms of development, one can see why possibly these things are misdiagnosed, and that would lead to the disparity in terms of how we consider boys and how we raise them to be men.
Yeah.
Yes, certainly. I think Mr. Phillip would help me with this, but I think we have a problem with diagnosing, correctly, our boys correctly, right? And I don't think I think our education system need to be restructured to accommodate boys more, because we are different. Males are different, men are different from women, girls are different from boys. We learn differently, we receive things differently, and we can't have a blanket for all, right? And I think that too often we expect boys to learn like girls. We expect to teach boys the same way we teach girls, right? And we expect them to behave like girls. And I think too often we fail to acknowledge that we are different, we have different, and our differences are what makes us beautiful, right? And what makes us strong.
Let me challenge you there, because you mentioned in terms of the education system. Now, are you suggesting that the classroom setting is not appropriate for boys learning, that is?
I'm suggesting that boys learn at a different pace. This is what I'm suggesting.
So you're talking about
they're stimulated differently.
Yes, differently.
And that is the truth of the matter.
Yeah.
I remember I was a teacher as well, taught in high school, D. Charlestown Secondary School, go Lions. My experience there was quite unique, and I guess I've been gender focused for a long time. I remember doing my SBA for IA for one of my CAPE subjects, sociology, and I did it on, male education in the high school, looking at disparity. And in Charleston Secondary School, we had more girls populating the upper streams, that's A1 and A2, and more boys in the lower streams, right? So that tells us that the educational system, unless we would say that boys just born and they don't have it, right? And I don't think that is the case, then we would say that our educational system is really allowing boys to drop through the cracks somewhere, right? When I became a teacher, I always had some age-3 classes. Sometimes I had 3 of them, right? And I had to find creative ways to work with them to ensure, and I had good success in some instances. I worked with my minister, my present minister, the Honorable Janet Nisbet, to teach a 2A3 class, and of course primarily made up of boys, and we had to take them on the field. One of us taught while the other one did classroom management, because the class needed 2 teachers, right? But we found different ways to stimulate them, not give them so much homework, because when they go home they go and play, something. But we made that class fun, and it excelled. We gave them the same exam that we gave to our A1 classes, right? There were some people in my A1 class who failed the English exam, and a good number of those some failed in A3 too, but we were happy to see that many of them, they made strides, and a lot of them passed the same exam, because we decided to work with them differently, right? So our educational system can do well to really look at how we treat with boys, to give that good extra focus and see, because we're not all the same, as Dion said. The motto of the Ministry of Education in Jamaica is every child can learn, every child must learn, right? And I took that as my own when I started teaching. We have to look and see how we can help.
So based on the experiences that you had then when you were a teacher, of course you were speaking to in a different life, your past life when you were a teacher. Why isn't it then that, or should I say, can we expect to see something more like that rolled out in Nevis? Because of course now you're in a more position to advocate, and the minister is in that role now. She is in a role where she has the ears of the policymakers. She helps to shape policy.
Yes.
So is that something that you will advocate for? Is that something that we can see more of coming from the department in terms of recommendations to help to reform the system to address our boys?
Well, I would hope that the system is more adaptive, and as new persons come in and so on, that does happen. And my minister she's a minister of a lot of things, but education isn't one of them. But I know she would try her best, to advocate as well. As when you're in gender work, you're an advocate. And so we would hope to see those sorts of changes.
Now, we know that there are, of course, societal and cultural expectations placed on boys, and Mr. Brown, you would have discussed some of them in terms of not being affectionate, not being expressive, as you just said, man up.
Yes. Yes.
Now, how does that affect their understanding of masculinity? What can we do as citizens when we are raising our children? Because it doesn't necessarily have to be our child. There are persons around us. Mr. Philip, of course, was a teacher, so he would have interacted with boys, whether it be in church, whether it be in society. We all interact with each other. So what can we as a society do to build that masculinity in a positive way, as opposed to the social and societal norms that you have said has had a devastating impact in terms of the way and some of the problems that we see playing out now?
I would say that, first of all, as parents, we have to say that all of our children deserve love, regardless of their sex and their gender. Right? Deserve to be affection, right? And as we show them those affection, I guess they will grow up knowing how to love and how to show that affection. I also believe that our children deserve both mother and father in order to thrive, to be developed holistically, whether it's a girl or a boy. I believe that both mother and father, it don't necessarily mean that they have to be in the same household, but they can co-parent and so on. In terms of the expectation, I think we have some expectations that we expect our boys to just be tough, because that's what we expect in a man. Our mothers, we expect, women, they expect in a man to be tough and be able to handle the way. And I think that's a false expectation to have. I think that the problems that we have in terms of violence, so we go back to the violence, right? Our men were never taught to express their feelings positively, and it comes out in a negative way. That's where we get violence, and people say men don't talk, men don't express themselves, but they do. It's just that they express it with violence, right? When they're angry, the first thing they do is try to lash out at somebody, hit somebody, and so that's a feeling, that's an emotion, they try to express. But how do we, when you're angry, how do you express that emotion in a positive way? How can you be vulnerable? And these are things that all parents need. The parents need to teach their children, and create a safe environment for them to do so. Right, and I think that sometimes boys don't feel like they can talk to their mothers about anything. So too, sometimes they probably don't think they can talk to their father. So it's also about creating that safe environment where they can express themselves and be themselves and go out to find their passions and be compassionate towards other people.
Mr. Philip,
Yes,
weigh in and look specifically also in terms of, give some consideration to the emotional aspect of it in terms of mental health, because May also, of course, is recognized as the month of mental health awareness. And so talk to us a bit about the emotional aspect that has on it, because Mr. Brown mentioned that girls don't expect men to be tough or boys to be tough and grow up to be tough men, but there's a lot of them who disagree, and I suppose it depends on how it depends on how you define toughness. What is tough? Because you can be tough without being aggressive.
Yes.
There's a big difference there.
Yes, definitely. Well, I want to start by touching on something that Dion would have mentioned. And even when we looked at behavior earlier, when Dion mentioned ADHD, prevalence of ADHD in men versus girls and in boys versus girls, a lot of the behavior that we see is not necessarily something like ADHD or autism also, that is somebody on the spectrum or that's clinically diagnosed. But a key factor in behavior, as Dion also mentioned, is parenting, and also the fact that we in St. Kitts and Nevis, we have so many broken homes, right, broken families, right, and children grow up without either their mother or their father present with them as often as they ought to. Some of them not at all, right, having one parent missing, right. That the boundaries then that are set, that are to be set, sometimes are not, and then you have behavior being, not what it should be. You have, especially for boys need their father around to show them what it is. One of the things boys learn through is emulating, right?
And if they're not getting it,
you can't just tell them. That's why, even in school, the talk and chalk, not gonna work. Someday, if they're able to do it, see you do it, they're able to grasp it better. So the boys, they learn how to express themselves as a male when they see their father doing it,
yes.
right? And or another male figure, because some boys are lucky enough to have uncles around, to fill in that gap, but a lot of them just don't, because we in St. Kitts and Nevis have had the highest instant of single parent households in the English speaking Caribbean since records have been kept since the 60s, right? We have now have a cycle and a culture of single motherhood, right? To be specific, single parenthood, where we have the mothers, they have they have grandmother, mother, and the mother have the children, right? So it's really granny and mommy raising you, right? In a lot of the instances, we are the men, right? And that major part of the household being missing leads to a lot of behavioral issues. In terms of mental, it affects mental health as well. When I sit across my desk or, you know, wherever, on a bench or wherever, to counsel with somebody, a domestic violence client, right? Somebody who has had domestic violence perpetrated against them. And I asked the said woman, you know, what are the triggers? Because you have to be aware, you know, you have to know how to diffuse situations. What are the triggers? A number of them would say, well, he would start to talk about this, or if I do something like this, right? And then you get the understanding that he doesn't know, as Dion mentioned, how to process the emotions, right? Some of them are fixated, some of the perpetrators of violence. When he remembers this, right? So he, you know, the mental aspect of it, the emotional aspect, so he's trapped in some past, some traumatic situation, and not being able, as Dion mentioned again, to express the emotion, to deal with it. And you know, largely in our society, you know, it's good for us to talk about this since we in Mental Health Awareness Month. But in our society, if you go to the doctor when you're sick, that's fine, that's expected. If you go to the counselor when you're feeling a little bit blue, there's something wrong with you. Yeah. But that perception, it persists even more as it relates to men. Because you expect to be macho and tough and you could deal with it.
So with these issues, then the question would be, are there any departments or projects that have been proposed, any activities that are used to counter these and help to develop men to express this? Because it's, as you mentioned, the link to antisocial activities is very real. So if you can't express it in one way, in a positive way, then you find a negative way to express it, which would ultimately lead in most cases to antisocial activities because it's something popular. And most of the times persons would suggest that that is one of the reasons why the men or the boys end up in those type of groups, because they are looking for that love and affection that they did not have the acceptance. And so you're part of a gang, you're welcome as part of a gang, and so you do feel that acceptance. So is the department working on any projects, or is there any project that is there to help to counter this attraction that they have, and to really ensure that boys and men would have the type of avenues to express themselves and to develop in a positive way?
Well, in Nevis, of course, we have the Boys Mentorship Program, dealing with our boys in the high schools. There are also a number of short-term programs that we run in terms of skills training, right, to introduce new skills to our boys and men, to show them that they can have a positive future. They don't have to be what their environment dictates, you know, and they can elevate themselves and become something better. We are looking forward to hosting our annual fish pot making workshop in the upcoming weeks, right? And that in and of itself gives our males some. I know last year the persons who attended, they were so happy to be able to learn this skill, and now they can use it to make money, right? To earn a living, additional income, right? And so the first time we did it, the boys in this particular community, they used to sit on the street, had nothing to do, right? And so that one skill that they learned transformed their lives. They're able to now provide a service, a product to fishermen, right, in their community. And so we do different training projects like that to elevate our young men, or men of any age. And so that is important work that we see that needs to take place, and hopefully we can see more of it.
Mr. Brown?
Okay. In Syncits, well, of course, we have the board mentorship program, and the program itself have an element of counseling in it. And when our boys having challenges, they can speak to a counselor. I remember that a few boys would have received counseling when they're having challenges with their anger and their attitude, their aggression. Right. Also, the mentors would, we would talk to them and really just give them a sense of belonging. I think so often that they don't get that at home, so they, like I said, join these special groups that where they can get that love and so on. And really and truly, I believe as the department do these stuff, right? We see other ministry departments doing stuff that will help our boys, youth, Ministry of Youth Empowerment does their remarkable teens and so on. We see the Elevate program that help with our young people, men at risk, right? So it's all a society approach, but we at the Department of Gender Affairs, we employ a number of projects. He spoke about the fish pot making. We also had kite making recently. In terms of the boys, we about to do a mentoring forum where mentors come together. The boys and the mentors come together to play games, to eat, to socialize, to have fun. Because not all the time that they would want to hear talk about life skills and so on. But also we want them to be able to have fun and to really have camaraderie and so on, and know how to socialize positively with one another, be able to hold a conversation, because a lot of our boys can hold conversations, right, and positive conversation that is, that would not lead to degrading women and so on. So we're teaching them how to respect themselves, first of all, and respect others, respect women and girls. So I think there's a number of things that as we employ these, we look out to different ministries and see how we can collaborate with them.
Let's move now to the Boys Excellence Award, and it seems like I don't know if the clock is wrong, but it seems like we have 10 minutes left in our discussion. So we want to touch on the Boys Excellence Awards. Yes. Of course, is something that is very important for the department. Tell us a bit about that Excellence Awards. And we should probably let's start in Nevis, because I understand, Mr. Philip, it's coming up a bit earlier this year than it is in St. Kitts.
Yes. Well, the Boy of Excellence Award, it is one of my favorite activities or initiatives that the department does. And I remember when Dion spoke to me about doing something to commemorate the Day of the Boy Child. I think it was about 3 years ago now, right?
Yeah.
And we came up with this. I was like, okay, yes, because we decided to have an award for the child, the boy child in the school who exhibit the values of respect and honesty and other treasured values, who is a leader among his peers, and also who is involved in the community, right? So those three. We were careful not to include academics or sporting prowess, right, in the criteria, because they're already, if you're good at those things, you're already getting an award, right? But they are solid individuals who are, as we said, leaders who are making a difference. They are not becoming statistics, and we decided that these people need to be seen. Might be the same sporting person or the academic genius, but we needed to broaden the scope. The first time we did it, the response that we got, from parents who were like, "Thank you so much," They would meet me on the road and they're saying, my child got the award at this school or that school. And it has been, I think it has made a difference and impact. I can tell based on the response from the schools. It also brought new light to the International Day of the Boy Child. There's great anticipation for it, and schools are coming on board to celebrate the day, doing something for the boys in their schools. And so that's really what the program does in a nutshell. We in Nevis, we have been giving the awards at the school, because one of the important focus, or one of the major things that we want to see from the awards is that the peers of the boy are inspired. So when I go to the school, I would say why we are here, reiterate the Day of the Boy Child, what it is, and see if anybody remember from last year or remember from when I was there for the Day of the Girl Child. And they would always tell me, yes, and this person got it, right? So they remember who won it last year. And who do you think was going to win it this year? Sometimes they are right, which means that these boys are really exemplary. But then I allow the principal or another teacher to come and read the profile of the awardee, so that the students know this is why he's being awarded, and I can do the same thing. It's nothing too difficult, and if I work hard enough, if I try to be positive, I can also be a boy of excellence. Right?
So that takes place on May 13th to 17th in Nevis, and in St. Kitts, Mr. Brown. The day itself, the International Day of the Boy Child, that would be on the 16th, and that's when the award will be held here.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about what's planned.
It started out just like Nevis. We went to different schools. We had different main figures that would go to different schools, hand them out at the assemblies and explain. It started out that way. And then it evolved into something bigger, right? And so we decided to bring all the boys together, and the ministers would hand, constituency representative would hand the boys the award. As well, this year we are planning to, as we do that, also let the principal present something extra to them in the school assembly and explain why they would have been recognized for Boys of Excellence. Why we call it Boys of Excellence? Because we realize that a lot of the time that people focus on academic, how well people do at academics and how well they do at sports, like Mr. Philip would have said. And so, but they don't really recognize the virtues of our male boy child, right? The virtue,
character
respect,
is important.
The character and so on.
It's the character that makes a man.
That would help them. And this is also used to encourage them to continue to being that way, exhibiting those characters, those virtues, and so on.
So with that being said, is there any post-engagement? They receive an award 1 year, but is there any post-engagement after that?
Actually, they were invited to the International Men's Day ceremony last year. This year, I think we're having a professional development session for them. And also, I think Nevis also is having a drone development workshop, and we decided that the Boards of Excellence should attend that drone development. So we follow them.
We in last year, because we, as you mentioned, we don't just want them to receive an award and that's it. But we, in December, during the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, we had both the Boys and Girls of Excellence to come together, and they did a paint and sip, right? And they would have done activism, right? Because their paintings would have been against gender-based violence, right? Promoting the message of equality and non-violence. And so we try to instill those values in them, because we realize obviously they're leaders and we want them to go on and make greater positive change. This year we are looking at the possibility of having, since we are still having them presenting the awards at their schools amongst their peers, we're looking at the possibility of having a reception of some sort with all of them coming together, right? But I must acknowledge that the Deputy Governor General has been behind the Boy of Excellence Awards, championing it every year. Every year she presents the first award on the Monday, right, at 2 schools, right? Because she believes in, instilling excellence in our boys. And we have other prominent individuals presenting awards throughout the week, like the Premier and other members of Cabinet And we would have even had boys presenting awards last year, boys who would have done well, either academically or, in the community, being noted as some leader in any sphere, even in sports and so on. Regionally, we had some of those persons who were still in school, in high school, to be going to their primary school, giving out the awards, so that the boys know that excellence is right here. You can reach out and touch it.
And so, what can society do, gentlemen, to help to nurture healthy attitudes in boys? I think we can end the program on that, giving persons who are listening a charge, so to speak, in terms of understanding what their responsibility is and helping to galvanize the support that is needed to help to reshape society. As you mentioned, this is a problem that has existed based on the cultural norms, based on societal impression of how things are supposed to be, and so in order to break that, you'll have to break the culture. Yes. So what can society do to help to shape the positive attitudes?
I'm happy that you mentioned breaking the culture, because I have a fear sometimes that when we look at what is normal for us in St. Kitts and Nevis, we behave as if, well, it has to be this way. And we kind of do things to accommodate it, and we can end up falling into a trap. And instead, we should look at what is right and change our norms to ensure that we are the best society that we can be. Right? So I'm happy you mentioned that. In terms of boys, as I mentioned, need both of the appearance. That's why God gave them. He created the thing that way, so that you need one and two, right? And so the fact that we have such prevalence of single-parent households, that's something that we can change. Our men and women can be more responsible, can, not be careless. And you know that when you're doing certain things, you can create a whole entire human. And they can come and they would need to have two people looking after them. And if things don't work out, still make that commitment to be in your child's life, to probably be the father that you didn't have, And if you don't know, reach out to someone, call the department, because even in our boys mentorship program, we have initiatives for our parents, right? Reach out, get some help to say, let me see how I can be the best father for my son or my girl, as the case may be, right? And that's how we can change what we are seeing right now.
Because even if you change the attitudes of the girls, then they would expect more of the boys and they wouldn't necessarily settle. Mr. Brown?
Okay, I'll be brief. Whether they're at school or at home, you always start at home, whether at school, home, or community, what we need persons to do with our boy child is to be patient with them. I started saying, you asked me a question, I started saying that boys learn at a different pace. And that is all the scientific data is showing that boys develop later than girls, their minds develop later than girls. Some scientists are even suggesting that boys should start school later than girls, right? But that's another conversation for next time. But be patient, don't be rash, when you see a boy is acting aggressively and out of the norm, you sit them down, ask them how they're doing, if there's anything you can help with, be patient with them, show them love, show them affection. Whether you are a mother, father, or uncle, nephew, a community member, teacher, we need to show our boys love and affection so they can emulate that, right? And we need to see, and if you don't know what to do, seek out help, like Mr. Philip said, find a mentor, a positive male role model that can be in their life and help you to, raise that son into a responsible manner.
Yeah, definitely. The last P in the motto for this year is prepare, and that speaks to the investment. Even if you're growing plants, you have to have an investment, or you're not going to have any fruit. Right. And so we have to invest in our boys.
And we'll leave it right there. Thank you very much, Mr. Phillip and Mr. Brown, for joining us on this edition of InFocus. And we'd like to thank you, viewers and listeners, for joining us for this edition. We trust that you will join us next week at the same place, at the same time, for another edition. I'm Ian Richards.
Join us every Wednesday for InFocus, a weekly talk show produced by the St. Kitts Nevis Information Service, where we provide exclusives with key persons within the government and discuss pertinent, relevant, and interesting matters that affect us all. Tune in every Wednesday, live on ZIZ Radio and streamed live on Facebook at SKNIS Media and ZIZ Online. InFocus, your government, your business.